On the surface here, this is interesting timing because you might recall recently there was another group of YouTubers who were also ex-BuzzFeed employees that announced a streaming service, and things did not go well, to say the least. The Try Guys launched a streaming service, we get some more details on the Apple TV Plus, Netflix, and Peacock bundle, and you can get Paramount Plus for free if you subscribe to cable. I'll cover all of this and more on today's episode of the Shall I Stream It podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. My name is Matt, and welcome to the Shall I Stream It podcast. This is the podcast that keeps you up to date on everything related to television streaming services. As a reminder, you can always listen to this podcast in audio form on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your audio podcasts. You can also follow Shall I Stream It on social media at Shall I Stream It on Facebook, X, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. But let's get on to our first story that, yes, the Try Guys have launched a streaming service. Now, some of you may be very familiar with the Try Guys, others may have no idea who they are, but I'll just kind of recap here. So the Try Guys are YouTubers that have a YouTube account that has over 8 million subscribers. They were previously employees of BuzzFeed, but they eventually branched out and did their own thing. This past week, they announced the launch of their own streaming service that is separate from YouTube that they are calling Second Try. Now, there's a lot to unpack with this, and as someone who creates content on this platform, I have my own perspective on this. So let's go through all of this and kind of unpack this piece by piece. So if you're unfamiliar with the content that the Try Guys produce, it's very professionally produced. You know, it's made in a studio. They have an entire team of people that work for them that produce this content. When they originally started out with BuzzFeed, the Try Guys, was four kind of dorky sort of guys that did these different challenges in videos that were kind of attention grabbing. Subjects like the Try Guys try shaving their legs, or the Try Guys try raising toddlers, or the Try Guys try to make a pizza without a recipe, things like that. Very kind of internet content, especially that I would associate with kind of the BuzzFeed era of YouTube about 10 years ago or so. So I believe it was 2014 when the Try Guys first started making content together in the Try Guys series on BuzzFeed, and then it was 2018 that they branched out and did their own thing with their own YouTube channel. Now, over the years, they've done various different things. They hosted an original series on YouTube Red before that was rebranded as YouTube Premium. They hosted a series for Food Network. They co-authored a book. They've done tours and different things. And essentially, how their business has worked is they have their YouTube channel where they're getting presumably ad revenue from the YouTube Partner Program. And they also have a Patreon where people support them and get extra bonus content and things like that. They've said the reason why they are branching out and doing this separate streaming service is because they don't want to essentially keep up with the changes with the algorithm, and they want to go directly to their fans. If you look at the numbers on their content, their recent videos have gotten anywhere from like 500,000 to 1 million views per video, which is certainly nothing to sneeze at, but it's also very different from their heyday when they would get like 5 million to 10 million views per episode. So thinking about this from a business angle, I'm like, okay, well, they have a production studio, they have all of these people. I'm sure the Try Guys aren't strapped for cash, but also to maintain the business that they were doing and maintain it at the level that they were doing it without scaling back possibly would require a change in their business model if they're going to continue doing what they're doing. And they seem to be getting a little less traffic, even if it is still a lot of traffic, is ultimately less than what they were getting before. Now, you may be familiar, back in 2022, there was some controversy with one of the Try Guys. There was even an SNL sketch about it. Essentially, one of the original members, Ned, had an affair with one of the employees, and he left the Try Guys back in 2022. So they have been down to 3 Try Guys, and now one of those 3 remaining Try Guys, we also found out, will be leaving and be branching off and doing his own things. So Eugene will eventually be leaving the Try Guys, but he is staying for one final season of their flagship Try Guys series. So with Second Try, the streaming service will be offered at $4.99 a month. Along with this was an announcement that they are essentially expanding their cast. So there are now Try Guys and gals in the Second Try universe. They're all going to be producing different series that are, kind of unscripted, sort of comedic. Seems to be fitting with the kind of BuzzFeed-esque content that you would associate with them. Nothing too serious, kind of just fluffy little content that you can watch that has things like cooking series and game shows and challenges and things like that. It kind of reminds me a little bit of what College Humor has done with Dropout. That is a streaming service they created that kind of branched off from the College Humor brand. A lot of people I know that have tried Dropout really like that service. Of course, I do think you have to be someone who has really followed College Humor and kind of appreciated their brand of content that they made on YouTube. But it does kind of give me a similar vibe to that. Now, one thing that they said is even though they are going to have exclusive series on Second Try, their main series, the Try Guys, will still be available for free on YouTube to the people who have subscribed to, their channel over time, and anyone who, the algorithm brings their content to, they'll still be able to watch that. Sounds like essentially they'll use that to cross-promote, okay, well, if you liked this free content, check out this paid content over here on our streaming service. I might end up trying out Second Try myself and making a video about it. If enough people that follow this podcast or YouTube channel want me to do that, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. But on the surface here, this is interesting timing because you might recall recently there was another group of YouTubers who were also ex-BuzzFeed employees that announced a streaming service, and things did not go well, to say the least. And that is Watcher. Now, Watcher is a group of ex-BuzzFeed employees. They originally, a couple of the guys made a series called BuzzFeed Unsolved. Sounds like a lot of their content is focused on true crime. I admit I haven't gotten deep into the Watcher universe. I've definitely seen a lot more of the Try Guys. I do think I saw some episodes of BuzzFeed Unsolved back in the day. But they announced the launch of their own streaming service for $5.99 a month. And that was just a few weeks ago. As soon as they announced that, there was a really swift backlash from their fans, essentially because, and I think this is a key difference here between what Watcher is doing versus what Try Guys was doing. Seems like Try Guys have had a slightly warmer reception, at least just from what I've observed online. But with Watcher, they announced that all of their content was coming to their streaming service. Another complication with that is that they also had a Patreon, and for the people that were subscribed to Patreon, they were going to have to get Patreon and get this extra streaming service to unlock everything. And, people looked at that situation and were just like, hey, this isn't fair. Now, I've tried to get some information about the Try Guys, if the people that are on their Patreon will have access to Second Try. I couldn't find that information. But it does seem like at least a key difference here is that with the Try Guys, their YouTube show is still going to be available for free, whether or not you have Second Try. And with Watcher, at least their original plan, which it does seem like they've walked back, their plan with that was to make everything behind a paywall, which essentially violates one of the cardinal sins of the internet, and that is that you are not supposed to get something that was available for free and then make people pay for it. So, a more cynical take on this might be that the Try Guys saw the reaction to Watcher and saw the backlash that they got from their fans and decided, let's do this a little bit differently. I don't know. You can be the judge of that, but I would say there's probably a non-zero chance that they looked at the reaction to Watcher and what was going on there and decided, let's make our main series available for free and continue to do that so we don't upset anyone. Now, why are you seeing these big YouTubers go off the platform and decide to launch their own thing? Another more cynical view on this might be that they're just trying to squeeze as much money as possible, but I do think there are business considerations going on with this, with them essentially deciding that, hey, we are making less money now than we were a few years ago. In order for us to do this at the scale that we're doing this at, we're going to have to change some things up. We've seen time and time again that creating content for social media, and I can speak for this from firsthand experience, it is very difficult to create a living for yourself and do that online, making social media. It's difficult, but it is possible for a single person to create a living for themselves. I think of people like Jenny Nicholson and the success that she had recently with that video about the Star Wars hotel, but her videos are just her in her bedroom speaking to a camera. There isn't a whole team of people doing professionally produced content the way that there is with the Try Guys. So I think the economics of being able to rent out a whole production facility and have an entire crew of people when your content is available for free on the internet, it is a little complicated for the math to be mathing with that. And if you were getting 10 million views, per video for a while, that's great. But then if that traffic sinks, they have to do things a little bit differently. The question that I have about all of this is, okay, if they were making X amount of money before and now they're making less money, how is adding more people to the Try Guys cast and creating more shows that all, just from the trailers and things that I've watched, it looks like, there's a budget going on here. It looks like perhaps they're spending more money on these shows than they were previously. How is this going to solve the problem of balancing out their budget? Even if they do have this new revenue stream, they're going to need a lot of people to go and sign up for that streaming service and stay subscribed to it over a long time period. Would it make more sense if they created content for, another streaming service or something like that, or did a different podcast, or did some other kind of thing to keep the people who followed their channel engaged? I don't know. I don't know that this business solution makes a lot of sense to me, but we'll see over time. Maybe Second Try will take off and be a success. But there is another reason why I think we are seeing these big YouTubers go off and branch out and do things away from YouTube. And that has been an issue which has been going on behind the scenes amongst YouTubers for at least a few years now. And that is that we've seen massive decreases, myself included, randomly due to what YouTube describes as adjustments they need to make to compensate for invalid traffic. And the information that we've gotten from YouTube over this hasn't been very transparent. If you were unfamiliar, if you are a YouTuber and you have at least 1,000 subscribers, they have what they call the YouTube Partner Program, where YouTube shares in the ad revenue from the clicks on your videos with the creators. And, it creates this incentive where you can create content for the sake of creating content and potentially get a little bit of money along the way as well. But what we've seen is that, for a lot of YouTubers that depended on that money from the ad revenue, we've seen these really dramatic decreases randomly. And it's happened with a lot of people. It's happened around the same time periods. And there's just very little information that we're getting from that. It seems to primarily the people that are talking about it, at least online, are the small to mid-sized YouTubers. And I think there's been a question amongst some of us behind the scenes of, are we finally going to get some of the larger YouTubers to chime in on the subject as well? And it seems like, to me, the message that we'll get from them is not so much for them to address it directly, perhaps for some diplomatic reasons, I would say, but we're seeing them instead speak through where they're headed as far as going away from YouTube. So I have a lot of thoughts about that. I won't get into all of it in this podcast episode, but I do think this could be the start of seeing more people, even people like Mr. Beast, decide, hey, I'm going to diversify and get off YouTube. And, even if you have some content on YouTube, looking beyond YouTube as a way to support your business if you're trying to make a living as a content creator. And so then the question becomes, okay, so how does YouTube sustain its platform if its creators don't want to make content on the platform? And I should note that YouTube is not strapped for cash. They actually had their highest quarter ever for ad sales at $8.1 billion in the first quarter of 2024. So the question is, if YouTube is doing so well with the advertising, why isn't that success being passed on to its creators? I have questions. But let's get on to our next story before I say anything that gets me in trouble. And that is with the bundle between Netflix, Peacock, and Apple TV Plus. This bundle is called StreamSaver, and it will be offered, to customers for the first time this next week. It is being offered by the cable company Comcast. Now, if you are unfamiliar, Comcast owns NBC Universal, which in turn owns Peacock. So that makes a little more sense when you put that into perspective. This bundle will include the ad-supported plans for Netflix and Peacock alongside Apple TV Plus, which is ad-free. At least for now, there have been rumblings that Apple TV Plus will have an ad-supported tier at some point, but at least for now, Apple TV Plus is advertising free. So altogether, this will cost $15 a month, and this will save you 30% compared to if you were to get them separately. Now, a key difference with this StreamSaver bundle as opposed to the bundle that was recently announced between HBO Max, Disney Plus, and Hulu is that with that bundle, anyone can subscribe to this. With this bundle, with the StreamSaver, with Peacock and Netflix and Apple TV Plus, you have to be an Xfinity customer. Now, Xfinity is the branding for the TV services and internet services that are available from Comcast. They've used that branding for at least, 10 or 15 years now. But with Comcast's internet and TV plans, you have to be a customer to get that StreamSaver bundle, and you're paying that $15 a month on top of whatever you're paying for internet. So if you are an Xfinity customer, it might not be a bad deal, but it is only offered to a select group of people. Now, one other bundle, which I haven't seen them talk about as much, which is being launched alongside this, is with Now TV. Now TV is a live TV streaming service that Comcast launched recently, I believe, before the end of this past year. I did make a video about it if you want to check out that video. But Comcast launched Now TV, and this live TV streaming service gives you various different entertainment channels like Hallmark Channel and Discovery, and I believe maybe Disney Channel. I can't remember if the Disney channels owned by Disney are on there, but it focuses on entertainment networks, sort of similar to what you would see from Philo and perhaps Sling, although it doesn't include sports networks. So if you want to get a bunch of those entertainment networks together with the StreamSaver bundle and get Now TV with the StreamSaver bundle, that will be $30 a month. What I didn't see in the press release, and we'll see once this actually shakes out, which again should be within, the next few days, is whether or not you have to be an Xfinity customer to get this Now TV bundle. Because right now, you do have to be an Xfinity customer to get Now TV. So we'll see if they decide to eventually separate that from Xfinity somehow. But at least for now, it's looking like you most likely will still have to be an Xfinity internet or TV customer to get this $30 a month bundle on top of it, but we'll see. So speaking of cable companies and streaming services, later this year, you'll be able to get Paramount Plus for free if you are a Spectrum TV customer. Now, Charter Communications, which owns Spectrum, recently approved a new multi-year agreement with Paramount Global, which owns various different networks, including CBS and Nickelodeon and MTV and Paramount Network and BET, all kinds of different entertainment outlets. Their contract was up. They were negotiating their agreements. Usually this is kind of a tense time if you are someone who's subscribed to a television service, because often the two parties don't agree, whether it's Disney, whether it's Paramount, whether it's Warner Brothers Discovery on the one end, and on the other end you have the cable companies or TV providers. And when they don't agree, that's why we see these carriage disputes where suddenly you lose a bunch of channels. We saw that recently with Fubo and Warner Brothers Discovery. But thankfully, these two parties did come to an agreement, so that means you'll be able to keep all of those channels from Paramount if you are a Spectrum TV customer. And on top of that, they are sweetening the pot. So now, as part of this agreement, if you are on a Spectrum TV plan, specifically the Spectrum TV Select or Me Plan Latino plans, At no additional cost, you will get Paramount Plus Essential, BET Plus Essential, which are the ad-supported plans for Paramount Plus. Now, the company also said that customers will be able to upgrade to the Paramount Plus with Showtime plan. They had pretty vague details on that, but I assume you will have to pay for that more expensive tier as opposed to getting that for free. Now, this mirrors an agreement that Charter Communications came to with Disney, and that was viewed as something that kind of paved the way for this. With Spectrum TV on certain plans, you can also get Disney Plus and ESPN Plus if you are a Spectrum TV customer. So now we're kind of shifting to this world, which is very interesting, where if you subscribe to a cable service, not only are you getting that cable service, which in a lot of cases you're actually accessing over the internet as opposed to with a cable anyway, and that's kind of a whole other dynamic with this. But in addition to that, you're also getting a cluster of different streaming services like Disney Plus and Paramount Plus and BET Plus and ESPN Plus. So really interesting shift that we are seeing in the TV industry where streaming and cable are blurring together. But at least if you are a Spectrum TV customer, not a bad deal. You're getting something for free, so can't complain about that. Now, Netflix has announced the viewership numbers for the second half of 2023. Now, previously, Netflix had dropped the viewership numbers for the first half of 2023. And when they did that, that was the first time they gave concrete details on how many people were actually watching their series. The different companies behind the streaming services have been a bit dodgy, to say the least, when it comes to providing this information publicly. So that was a big deal when Netflix first had that information out there, and now we have information for the entire year of 2023. From this data, we learned that altogether, people watched over 90 billion hours of Netflix in the second half of 2023, 183 hours total for the year. That does mean that the second half had slightly fewer numbers of people watching, so that is interesting. But amongst the different shows that are highlighted on the spreadsheet that Netflix released, which includes 99%, they said, of all of their viewing data, we learned that One Piece was an enormously popular show. I mean, we knew a lot of people watched it, but it was actually their number one series of the year in terms of the number of hours that people were tuned in for One Piece. One thing that they highlighted in their press release was that it also led to more people going back and watching the original anime series for One Piece as well. It was adapted from the animated anime series and they made it into a live action series. Similarly, people who watched Squid Game The Challenge went back and watched more hours of Squid Game. So because this is something they're really emphasizing in their press release, it kind of makes me think that Netflix might be looking at this and deciding, it seems like people really, have this sort of, domino effect where they watch one thing and then they go back and watch an older thing. Perhaps we'll start to see them really franchise out more series, produce things like reality spin-offs of series. I could see them doing something like that with Bridgerton, perhaps doing a Bridgerton cooking challenge or a Bridgerton dating show or something, crazy like that. So I would anticipate that is in the cards for the future, considering Netflix seems to be really excited that people were watching older series when they watched the newer series. Besides that, The Witcher, Lupin, Who is Aaron Carter, and Dear Child rounded out the top 5 for TV shows with Netflix. As for movies, Leave the World Behind, Heart of Stone, Leo, Nowhere, and The Outlaws were the top 5 movies. And for the final story of the day, Kino Lorber has launched a streaming service for film aficionados. Now, Kino Lorber is an independent film distributor who specializes in festival favorites and art house movies. Their streaming service will be known as the Kino Film Collection. It will be available for $5.99 a month on its own, or you can get it through Prime Video channels as well. The streaming service sounds like something similar to perhaps Mubi or the Criterion channel. Something where if you're a movie buff, if you want to see foreign films, if you want to see independent films, this will be one of your destinations to go. Now, at launch, they do have a collection of films that have been featured over the years in the Cannes Film Festival. that did, of course, happen recently. So if that's something you want to check out, I know it is another streaming service on top of everything, but I'm sure there's a number of movies you can find on the Kino Film Collection that you will not be able to get other places. So that does it for today's podcast. I want to thank everyone so much for watching. And again, if you liked this podcast, make sure to check out Shall I Supporters on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Shall I Supporters and consider becoming a monthly member to support this podcast and keep Shall I Stream It going. Hope everyone enjoys their long weekend. I know it is a solemn occasion with Memorial Day for a lot of reasons, but perhaps if you're spending time with your family, going out for barbecues, or just enjoying an extra day off from work, I hope you enjoy your time. And hey, it's the kickstart to summer too.